I flew across the country to surprise my daughter, but instead I found her in ICU while her husband partied on a luxury yacht with the money I trusted him to spend on her care. What happened next is a story of betrayal and calculated revenge. Before we dive in, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You want to miss a single shocking twist in this story? Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far this story reaches. Now buckle up, because what happened to my daughter will break your heart, and the revenge I took will leave you completely speechless. I remember the moment I realized something was terribly wrong. I had flown across the country to surprise my daughter Matilda. I thought I'd bring a smile to her face, maybe lighten the heavy atmosphere that had been clouding our family for months. But nothing prepared me for the sight that met my eyes. Her room in the hospital was quiet, almost too quiet. Machines beeped softly, the smell of antiseptic hung in the air, and Matilda lay pale against the crisp white sheets, her hair thinning from chemotherapy. She was awake, staring at the ceiling with a distant expression I'd seen far too often in recent months. I swallowed hard. "Dad," she whispered. Her voice was weak, fragile, but there was relief in it too. Relief that I was here. Relief that someone had come to protect her when she needed it most. I sat beside her bed, reaching for her hand. It felt cold against mine. "Hey sweetheart, how are you feeling?" I asked gently, careful not to startle her. Matilda turned her head slowly, and I could see the strain etched into her features. "Better now that you're here," she said, attempting a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Not yet." I glanced at the bedside table and noticed her phone. Notifications blinked silently, a muted reminder of the outside world. My stomach sank. I knew I had to face the truth. Gary, Matilda's husband, was supposed to be here. Supposed to be helping, supporting, standing by her side. Instead, I saw something else. Something that made my blood run cold. Pictures, sent from mutual friends, showed Gary laughing on a luxury yacht. Champagne in hand, sun reflecting off the pristine deck. A carefree grin plastered across his face. $15,000 for a weekend he shouldn't have had the freedom to enjoy. My hands trembled, my mind raced. How does a business consultant afford this? How could he live like this while my daughter fought for her life? And then it hit me. The memory. A year ago he came to me. "Harley," he said, with that charming smile that hid everything, "I have some family emergencies. Medical bills. Things have piled up. Could I access your backup account, just temporarily? I'll pay it back." I remember feeling impressed, caring even. A husband protecting his wife from financial stress. Emma needed dental work. The house needed repairs. I'd thought I was helping a family, not funding a betrayal. Now, staring at my daughter's hospital bed, I realized every promise had been a lie. Every dollar I had entrusted to him, every cent meant for her care, had been siphoned off into his selfish escapades. I pulled out my phone, opening the banking app. The transaction history loaded slowly, each line more damning than the last. Marina del Rey yacht charters $15,000, posted yesterday. New Malibu, $150, 3 days ago. Beverly Hills Mercedes Savista, $1,400, last week. Rodeo Drive shopping, $3,200, 10 days ago. The list went on and on. Designer purchases, extravagant dinners, luxury I hadn't even dreamed of spending on myself, all funded by the account I had trusted to protect my daughter. Anger surged, hot and bitter, but I forced it down. Rage could cloud judgment. Cold calculation would serve Matilda better. I opened a small notebook, writing down key information. Account numbers, transaction IDs, dates, patterns, every detail meticulously recorded. Gary had made one fatal mistake. He had relied on my money to fund his betrayal. Step 1. Immediate financial amputation. Cut off his access before he could spend another dime. Step 2. Personal consequences. He would learn that actions have consequences. Consequences measured with precision. I took a deep breath. The hospital buzzed around me. Nurses moved quietly. Machines hummed. The cafeteria faintly echoed in the distance. But I was focused entirely on the mission before me. Protect my daughter. The bank's emergency line picked up on the third ring. First National Emergency Services. "This is Amanda speaking. How can I help you tonight?" I spoke slowly, clearly, keeping my voice calm. "This is Harley Sims. I need to revoke authorized access on my backup account immediately." Verification followed. Questions, answers, protocols, repeated for security. But my mind was already several steps ahead. "Mr. Sims, show Gary McCoy has been an authorized user on your backup account since April 2022. Do you want complete revocation? Immediate, permanent, every service, every linked payment, every card?" Cut him off completely. I said, each word deliberate. The hold music played, a quiet background to the storm building in my mind. When Amanda returned, I confirmed every detail. $127,000 transferred to my primary account. Credit cards cancelled. Automatic payments terminated. Gary's financial lifeline severed with surgical precision. I hung up and opened my app. Everything was as it should be. Access revoked. Notifications confirming action arrived in rapid succession. Justice, delivered electronically, cleanly, and irrevocably. I closed my notebook and took a moment to breathe. Step 1 was complete. Gary could enjoy his yacht tonight, but tomorrow, reality would catch up with him. I turned back to Matilda. Her eyes were still open, following my every move. I pulled the chair closer and held her hand. "You don't have to worry about any of that anymore," I said softly. "Focus on healing. Leave everything else to me." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Relief, hope, gratitude finally surfacing. "Promise me something," she whispered. "Don't let anger at Gary consume you. I need my dad, not another angry man in my life." I smiled faintly, brushing her hair back. "I promise, sweetheart. Rest now." And in that moment I realized this was just the beginning. Protecting Matilda wasn't about money alone. It was about reclaiming her life from the man who had abandoned her, and ensuring she and her children would never face that betrayal again. Matilda's hand in mine felt like an anchor. I could see her fighting fatigue, but her eyes, for the first time in months, held clarity. She needed to speak, to unburden herself of truths she had been carrying silently. "Dad." Her voice trembled, barely audible. I leaned closer. "I need to tell you something about Gary." I squeezed her hand gently, giving her the space to speak. "Take your time, honey, I'm here." She exhaled slowly, testing each word. "He changed after Jack was born. He started saying I wasn't contributing enough financially." A cold shiver ran through me. How could anyone, especially a husband, burden his wife with such a thing while she battled illness? I stayed silent, letting her continue. "The freelance design work got harder. Jack was calicky, and Gary said I was a burden." My fist clenched beneath the blanket, but I kept my voice calm. "A burden? You're raising 2 children while fighting for your life. That's not a burden, that's courage, strength, love." Tears threatened to spill from her eyes when the cancer diagnosis came. He shut down, stayed out later, excuses about work. He stopped caring. I tried to stay strong for Emma and Jack, but her voice faltered, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. I brushed them away gently. "It's okay. It's not your fault, sweetheart. You did everything you could." But I defended him to you, to everyone, even when he ignored me, even when I was sick. I thought if I endured, if I kept smiling, maybe he'd come back to us. Her voice broke completely, raw with vulnerability. I could feel my own anger bubbling beneath the surface, but I held it in. Now was not the moment for fury. Now was the moment to provide strength, sweetheart. You are perfect, exactly as you are. Any man who can't see that doesn't deserve you, especially not someone who abandons you when you need them most. She squeezed my hand, small but powerful, like she was anchoring herself to me. "You were right about him from the beginning, weren't you?" I had never said a negative word about Gary to her face, but fathers see things wives choose not to notice. I nodded slowly. "I was wrong about one thing, though. I thought he at least loved you. I never imagined he'd leave you to fight this alone." Her small voice quivered. "The worst part is telling Emma why Daddy isn't here anymore. She keeps asking when he's coming home." My heart sank. How do you explain to a 6-year-old that her father chose his comfort over her mother's life? I swallowed hard. "You don't have to explain that to her. I'll handle it. You focus on getting better. I'll take care of everything else." Matilda's expression softened. "Dad, I can't ask you to." "You're not asking, you're telling me," I said firmly, brushing her hair from her forehead. "Your only job is healing. Leave Gary, the money, the stress, leave everything to me." She nodded weakly, finally allowing herself to relax, her fingers loosening in mine. "Promise me something," she whispered again. "Promise me you won't let anger at Gary consume you." I smiled faintly, brushing back her hair once more. "I promise, sweetheart. Rest now." For a few moments, the hospital room was silent, except for her steady breathing. But I knew the anger would still be there, waiting, a tool to be wielded with precision. Some acts, some betrayals, demanded more than forgiveness. They demanded consequences. The phone buzzed on the bedside table. Unknown number. I glanced at Matilda. She was finally sleeping and stood, moving toward the window. I answered cautiously. "Harley." The voice was panicked, familiar. "Gary, what did you do?" My cards there being declined, I felt no sympathy. He had spent years betraying us. "Where are you, Gary?" I asked, calm, ice running through my words. "That's not your business." His tone shifted from panic to anger. "I'm on business networking at parties. I need you to restore access immediately." I let the silence stretch. He had lived off my money while my daughter suffered. His panic was music to my ears. "Gary," I said slowly, carefully, "you chose champagne over chemotherapy appointments. You chose parties over your children. You chose my money over your family. And now you are seeing the consequences." His voice cracked, the panic undeniable. "Harley, wait, we can work this out. I can come to the hospital." "No, Gary, we can't work this out." My voice was firm, decisive. I turned back to the bedside and looked at Matilda. Tears streamed down her cheeks, not sadness, but relief. She was seeing her father protect her the way a real man protects his family. "You made your choice," I said. "Now live with the consequences." I could hear the yacht engines, laughter, music as world collapsing. Harley, please, I can explain. Just give me a chance. I hung up and blocked the number. Final, irrevocable. Matilda's grip tightened around my hand, her eyes wide as she absorbed every word. Thank you, Daddy, she whispered. You never have to thank me, I said, brushing back her hair. That's what fathers do. And in that moment, the weight of months of betrayal, lies, and fear began to lift. For the first time in a long time, my daughter and my grandchildren were safe. The hospital room felt like a sanctuary now, quiet except for the soft hum of monitors and the distant footsteps of nurses. I watched Matilda rest, her breathing finally steady, but my mind was already racing, calculating the next steps. Gary's access to my finances had been severed, but the damage he could still cause emotionally, legally, socially needed to be contained. Every action he'd taken was now recorded, every transaction the digital fingerprint of betrayal. I pulled out my notebook again, the one I had carried since the moment I saw the yacht photos. Each page meticulously organized, account numbers, transaction histories, phone logs, dates, and amounts. $15,000 yacht rental. $2,400 Beverly Hills Mercedes service. Rodeo Drive shopping $3,200 in one afternoon. Luxury had been his obsession while Matilda's life hung in the balance. As I reviewed the numbers, a cold, methodical clarity settled over me. Rage had its place, but calculation would serve my daughter better. I began planning the full scope of the countermeasures. Step 1 was complete. Financial isolation. Step 2 would be more personal. Gary had underestimated the consequences of using my trust as a weapon. My phone buzzed again, a notification from the bank confirming all transactions had been reversed. Gary's access revoked, and fraud alerts activated. Each notification felt like a small, quiet victory. I let myself a moment of satisfaction, knowing that the financial leverage he had wielded so carelessly was now gone. But I couldn't linger. This was just the beginning. Matilda stirred, sensing my presence. She opened her eyes, her gaze weary but attentive. Dad, she whispered. I had a nightmare about him again. I sat close, brushing her hair back gently. You're safe now. He can't hurt you anymore. Not financially, not emotionally, not ever again. She nodded, relief mixed with exhaustion evident on her face. It feels unreal that he could just spend all our money while I was in the hospital. How did he think he could get away with it? I let out a quiet breath. Some people only think of themselves. Some people believe they can manipulate, exploit, and lie without consequence. Gary just learned that actions have consequences and that I will protect you and the kids, no matter what it takes. Her fingers twined with mine, the fragile bond of trust between father and daughter rekindled. Dad, I'm so scared for the kids. Emma keeps asking why Daddy doesn't call, why he isn't here. Jack, he doesn't understand yet, but I don't want him to grow up thinking this is normal. I squeezed her hand gently, trying to convey both strength and reassurance. We'll handle that, one day at a time. They'll understand, eventually. And when they do, they'll know that their family stood together, even in the darkest times. The nurse peeked in to check vitals, giving us a brief reprieve from the heavy conversation. When she left, I took a deep breath. It was time to strategize the next move. Gary had no idea that severing financial access was only the first layer of a plan carefully constructed to protect my daughter, my grandchildren, and their future. I opened my laptop and began outlining every possible risk. Legal threats, potential custody manipulations, social manipulation. Gary's threat to take the kids had been empty, but I couldn't leave anything to chance. The court records, the phone logs, the financial evidence, they would all be critical if he attempted to leverage the system. Every detail mattered. As I worked, I felt the weight of the past months, Matilda's diagnosis, the endless hospital visits, the lies, the stolen money pressing down on me. And yet, for the first time, there was clarity, focus. The storm of anger had transformed into a methodical determination, a strategic force to protect those I loved. Hours passed, unnoticed. I moved through each task with precision, setting up alerts, documenting every transaction, creating backups of all communications, the phone calls, the texts, the emails, each one a record of Gary's duplicity. By the time the evening shift of nurses arrived, I had laid the groundwork for complete legal, financial, and emotional protection. Finally, I sat back, exhausted but resolute. Matilda's breathing was deep and steady. The children were safe. Gary had been neutralized, at least for now, in terms of direct influence over our lives. But the hardest part remained, ensuring that he could never manipulate, intimidate, or harm my family again. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the Los Angeles skyline. Lights sparkled like stars mirrored in the city below. And for the first time, I allowed myself a small smile. My daughter was alive, my grandchildren were safe, and I was no longer powerless. I returned to Matilda's bedside. Sleep now, honey. Tomorrow we plan the next steps. She nodded, eyes heavy with exhaustion. I kissed her forehead, the same way I had when she was a little girl afraid of thunderstorms. The weight of months of fear, betrayal, and uncertainty began to lift, replaced by a sense of purpose and resolve. Outside, the city hummed, indifferent to the quiet victory in room 712, but inside, a father had taken back control, securing a future that Gary could no longer touch. And that night, for the first time in months, I allowed myself to believe that our family could finally heal. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the hospital blinds, casting long golden rectangles across the floor. Matilda was awake, eyes bright but weary, the remnants of yesterday's emotional storm still lingering. I sat beside her bed, notebook closed but mind racing. Gary's financial manipulation had been neutralized, but I knew the battle wasn't over. Emotional and legal fallout could strike at any moment. The foundation had been laid, but the structure needed reinforcement. Dad, Matilda's voice was quiet, almost hesitant. I need to tell you more about Gary, about the things I've been afraid to admit. I reached for her hand, squeezing gently. You don't have to be afraid. I'm here to listen, to help, and to make sure nothing else harms you or the kids. She swallowed hard, eyes glistening. It started after Jack was born. He began complaining about me not contributing enough financially. My freelance work wasn't enough, he said, and then came the medical bills. Suddenly, I was a burden. I felt a pang of rage, the old engineer's precision taking over, calculating the injustice, mapping out the deceit. But I kept my voice calm. You were raising 2 children while fighting a serious illness. Nothing about that makes you a burden. That man was wrong and you were right to see it. Tears began to roll down her cheeks, and I brushed them away softly. He changed when the diagnosis came. Instead of supporting you, he shut down, started staying out later, making excuses, leaving you alone. How does someone do that to their own family? Matilda's hand trembled in mine. I kept hoping that if I got better, that if I didn't complain, maybe he'd come back, that I could protect Emma and Jack, but I can't. Dad, he's gone. Her words hung in the air like a dagger, but I didn't let anger consume me, not yet. Rage was fuel, but not the solution. Strategy, precision, and evidence would serve Matilda and the kids better. He made a choice, I said quietly, every word measured, every day, every moment. He chose parties, luxury, and himself over you and his own children. That choice has consequences, and we're making sure he faces every one of them. Matilda's eyes widened, relief and horror mingling in equal measure. Dad, you did all that. I started with finances, I admitted. Your emergency access was his playground, but that ended yesterday. Every card, every account cut off, fraud alerts in place, the money that was his lifeline gone. His world is collapsing without him even realizing it. She squeezed my hand tighter. I can't believe it. All this time I thought I was protecting the family. I didn't realize he was using my father's trust to fund his life of luxury while I was fighting for my life. Exactly, I said, voice steady but firm. Every yacht, every designer purchase, every expensive meal came from my account. And now, those choices have consequences. Not just financially, but socially, legally, everywhere he thought he had power. The nurse returned, checking vitals and offering quiet encouragement. She left, and Matilda's expression softened, gratitude and exhaustion blending together. I'm so tired of being afraid, she whispered. You don't have to be anymore, I said, brushing her hair back. Fear ends today. The kids are safe. You are safe, and he won't ever manipulate, intimidate, or control you again. I could see the relief washing over her, the first signs of true liberation in months. Dad, thank you. I don't think I've ever felt truly safe like this before. Safety isn't a gift, sweetheart. It's something I fight for, and you deserve every ounce of it. Your children deserve it too. Her grip tightened, eyes searching mine. But what about him? He'll try to come back. He'll make threats. He'll use the courts. I nodded. He can try. But every move he makes will be documented. Every threat, every call, every attempt to manipulate. The law will see the truth, and so will everyone around him. He's powerless now, not because I wanted revenge, but because justice has its way when the truth is undeniable. Matilda exhaled slowly, a mixture of exhaustion and relief. It's just strange, Dad, to finally see him for who he really is, and to know I don't have to defend him anymore. That's the hardest part, I admitted. Recognizing the betrayal, accepting that the person you trusted is gone. But you've got something stronger now: truth, evidence, and the unwavering support of your family. We sat in silence for a moment, listening to the soft hum of monitors, the distant conversations of hospital staff, and the occasional beep of a vital sign. Outside, the city moved on as if unaware of the quiet justice unfolding inside this room. I opened my notebook again, making sure every transaction, every phone call, every instance of neglect was documented. If Gary tried to regain influence, we would have a complete record ready. I felt a strange calm rage had been replaced with meticulous purpose. You know, Dad, Matilda said after a long pause, I've been so afraid to tell anyone, to admit the truth about him, but now, hearing you speak it, seeing the evidence, I feel lighter, like a burden has been lifted. That's exactly it, honey, I said. The weight of fear, manipulation, and betrayal only has power if you carry it. We've offloaded that weight. Gary is no longer capable of wielding it against you. Matilda looked at me, eyes filled with something I hadn't seen in a long time. Hope. So, this is really over. He can't hurt us anymore. Over? I asked, voice firm. It's never truly over, but it's controlled. He has no access, no leverage, no power. And if he tries anything, we're ready. Every detail documented, every action accounted for. That's how you neutralize a predator methodically, deliberately, with evidence that cannot be ignored. She nodded, a small smile forming. I think I'm ready to let go. Ready to focus on getting better, on the kids, on life again. That's all I want, Matilda, I said softly. Your only job now is healing. The rest, that's my responsibility, and I will not fail you. Her hand found mine again, a silent pact, a gesture of trust and love that transcended words. I knew the journey ahead would have challenges, but for the first time in months, there was clarity, there was peace, and there was hope. The hospital room, once a place of fear and anxiety, now felt like a fortress, a safe space where healing could truly begin. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to believe that our family could finally rebuild, free from the shadow of betrayal and abuse. The days that followed were a blur of recovery, paperwork, and planning. Matilda's strength returned in small, steady increments, each day a victory. Each smile a reminder that resilience could outshine betrayal. I stayed close, helping her navigate appointments, paperwork, and therapy schedules, while ensuring the kids felt safe and loved. Emma and Jack sensed the shift in the household, the absence of Gary's manipulative presence, and slowly, laughter began to return. One afternoon, as I watched Jack chase a soccer ball across the hospital courtyard, Emma tugged at my sleeve. Grandpa, tell me again about how you stopped the bad man, she said, eyes wide with curiosity. I smiled, crouching down to her level. Do you want the story of courage or the story of justice? The story of courage, she exclaimed. I paused, realizing how much this story would shape her understanding of family, trust, and strength. It starts with knowing what's right and standing up for it, I began. Sometimes, the people we trust most don't make the right choices, and when that happens, it's up to us to protect the ones we love. Matilda watched from her chair, a soft smile on her face. She had grown stronger in ways even she didn't fully understand yet. Her eyes followed every movement, alert and engaged, a stark contrast to the exhaustion and fear that had weighed on her just weeks ago. Meanwhile, the legal aspects of Gary's betrayal were beginning to unfold. Divorce proceedings, custody agreements, and financial settlements were underway, but I handled most of it quietly. Every call, every document, every step reinforced the same message. Gary had lost his grip, and the law would recognize the truth. One evening, after a long day of meetings and hospital rounds, Matilda turned to me, her expression pensive. Dad, it's strange. I feel free, but also angry. Angry at him, angry at myself for trusting him. Anger is natural, I said gently. It's a response to injustice, a signal that boundaries have been crossed. But it's what you do with that anger that defines the outcome. You can let it consume you, or you can channel it into strength, into rebuilding your life. And I promise, that's what we're doing. Her eyes softened, the tension easing. I don't want the anger to take over my life. You won't, I assured her. You've seen him for who he is. You've reclaimed your space, your finances, and your dignity. The rest is history. And every day, you're growing stronger. That's more powerful than any grudge. That night I returned to my own quiet planning. Gary's financial collapse had begun in earnest. Credit cards declined, accounts frozen, and fraud alerts triggered. Each notification that reached my inbox felt like a silent justice, mechanical, precise, inevitable. Gary had made choices, and now he would face the consequences without question. I also began organizing a long-term plan for Matilda and the children. Housing arrangements, school enrollment for Emma and Jack, and a secure family fund, all steps to ensure stability and protection. The experience had taught me that family safety required foresight, preparation, and sometimes, ruthless decisiveness. In those quiet hours, I reflected on how betrayal could reveal character. Gary had chosen comfort over commitment, parties over responsibility, himself over his family. Matilda's courage and resilience, on the other hand, had been tested and proven. The contrast was stark, and it underscored a lesson I would never forget. True strength is not in wealth, in luxury, or in selfish indulgence. It is in loyalty, love, and action, when it matters most. A week later, Matilda began regaining her energy in earnest. We started small excursions outside the hospital, short walks around the courtyard where the children could play. Each outing was a subtle victory, a reclamation of normal life after months of fear and manipulation. Emma and Jack thrived in the renewed environment, their laughter and chatter filling spaces that had long been silent with anxiety. One afternoon, as we sat on a bench overlooking the city, Matilda shared a memory she had long buried. Dad, I remember the first time Gary said I was a burden. I remember the feeling, the shame, the guilt, but now it doesn't control me. I see it for what it was, his weakness, not mine. I nodded, feeling the pride that comes from witnessing growth born of adversity. Exactly, and that realization is what will guide you forward. You are strong, capable, and deserving of love that does not come with strings or betrayal. Matilda leaned against me, a rare moment of stillness. Thank you for being my anchor through all of this, for showing me what it means to fight for family, for love. You didn't need saving, I said softly. You needed support, guidance, and someone to ensure the system worked in your favor while you focused on healing. That's all I've done helped clear the obstacles. Days turned into weeks and our new rhythm settled in. Hospital visits became less frequent. Therapy sessions progressed steadily, and the children adapted fully to their new reality. The weight of Gary's betrayal began to feel distant, a shadow overshadowed by the light of our regained freedom. Through it all, I made sure Matilda retained control over her decisions, her voice the authority in every discussion about finances, health, and the children's well-being. Empowerment, not dominance, became the cornerstone of our approach. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned deep orange, Matilda turned to me with a small smile. "Dad, I think I'm finally ready to start living again. Really living. And that, sweetheart," I said, "is all I ever wanted for you and the kids, to see you free, happy, and strong. To know that nothing and no one can take that away from you again." The three of us, Matilda, Emma, Jack, stood together for a moment, the fading sunlight casting long shadows on the ground. It was more than just a family reunited. It was a family reborn, forged in adversity and strengthened by love and justice. In those moments I realized that true victory wasn't in punishment or revenge, was in restoration, in reclaiming what was stolen: dignity, security, and the simple joy of being together without fear. Gary's misdeeds would be felt, but they would no longer define our lives. We had reclaimed that power. And as night fell, the city lights flickering on one by one, I knew the hardest battles were behind us, and the future bright, secure, and filled with hope lay ahead. As Matilda's strength grew, so did her confidence. The shadow of Gary's betrayal loomed, but it no longer dictated the rhythm of our days. Each morning began with a quiet, routine breakfast together, laughter over small jokes, and the kind of easy conversation that comes only after the tension of fear and uncertainty has finally lifted. I watched her carefully, noting subtle signs of resilience. She walked with her shoulders back, her voice firm yet warm, and a glint in her eyes that had been absent for far too long. Emma and Jack followed her lead, sensing the difference, learning from it, absorbing the unspoken lessons of courage and empowerment. One afternoon, while organizing the children's school supplies, Matilda turned to me with an expression I hadn't seen in months, a mixture of determination and reflection. "Dad, I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened. About Gary, about the betrayal, about losing trust in people I loved." I nodded, knowing exactly where this was headed, and I asked softly, letting her fill the silence. And I realized, I can't let anger control me. I can't let him have that power over my life anymore. I have to reclaim my world, step by step. "You've already started," I said, squeezing her shoulder. "Every choice you make for yourself, every boundary you enforce, every moment you embrace your life, that's reclaiming control. That's winning." She smiled faintly, but the seriousness remained. "It's not just about me, though. I want to make sure Emma and Jack grow up in a home where trust is sacred, where loyalty is shown through action, and where betrayal is never tolerated. I want them to see what real courage looks like, and they will," I said, proud. "They're learning from the best. You've lived it, and now they will witness it." That night, after the children had gone to bed, Matilda and I sat on the porch swing, the warm Texas breeze brushing our faces. The quiet hum of cicadas filled the air, and the distant city lights painted a soft glow over the yard. "I can't believe how peaceful it feels now," she whispered, leaning back into the swing. "For months it was all chaos, fear, uncertainty, and now this calm. It's the calm that comes after storms," I replied, thinking of the long nights spent in hospitals, the relentless worry, the hidden battles we had fought. "But remember, the calm doesn't come without the storm. You had to face it to get here. You had to be brave, even when it was terrifying, and you were." Her eyes glistened with tears, not of sorrow, but of release. "I feel free," she said simply, the words almost a mantra. Freedom. That was what we had reclaimed, not just for her, but for the children, for the family, and for myself. It was a freedom born of truth, justice, and action. Gary had taken much, but he had underestimated the depth of commitment, the strength of a father's love, and the resilience of a mother's spirit. The following weeks were devoted to building a life that reflected this newfound clarity. We found a home in a quiet Texas neighborhood, safe and spacious, where Emma and Jack could play freely. Every corner of the house was chosen with care, a garden where they could explore, a backyard where laughter would echo, and rooms filled with warmth and security. Matilda embraced her role fully, balancing her renewed health with responsibilities, work, and the children's growth. She flourished in ways that no illness, betrayal, or fear could suppress. Every design project she undertook became an outlet for her creativity, a declaration that she would not be defined by suffering but by resilience. I stayed close, guiding when necessary, supporting when needed, but also stepping back to let her reclaim autonomy. She had learned to trust herself, to prioritize her family, and to enforce boundaries without hesitation. Each day was a testament to her evolution from a woman overwhelmed by betrayal to a mother and wife in full command of her life. One afternoon, as I helped Emma with a school project, Matilda called me to the kitchen. She was holding a letter, her hands slightly trembling. "Dad, it's from the school board. They want to feature me and the kids in a community story about resilience and family strength." I felt a swell of pride. "That's incredible, Matilda. It's recognition of everything you've endured and everything you've rebuilt." She nodded, eyes shining. "I want people to see that it's possible to overcome betrayal, illness, and fear, that families can survive even the worst circumstances as long as they have love and courage." It was a powerful statement, and one that mirrored everything we had worked for. I realized then that the story wasn't just about revenge, it was about restoration, empowerment, and hope. Gary's failures had paved the way for a narrative of strength, and now it was time to share that story, quietly, with the world. The following weeks were marked by quiet victories. Matilda's health continued to improve, her energy and confidence returning fully. Emma and Jack thrived in their new school, making friends and excelling academically. And I, as both father and protector, took solace in the simple joy of witnessing a family reclaiming its rightful peace. Occasionally, Gary would attempt to re-enter our lives, Mills calls, or even indirect threats, but each time, we were prepared. Legal measures were in place, financial safeguards secured, and our unity remained unshakable. The past had given us tools and wisdom, and we used them to ensure that no one could disrupt our newfound harmony. By the time the sun set on another warm Texas evening, the house was alive with laughter, light, and a sense of safety that had once seemed impossible. Matilda, Emma, Jack, and I sat together on the porch swing, reflecting on how far we had come. "The storms were harsh," I said, gazing at the horizon, "but we made it through, and now nothing can shake the strength of this family." Matilda smiled, resting her head on my shoulder. "No storms can ever take this away. We're stronger than ever." And in that moment, under the vast Texas sky, I knew it was true. The past could not define us, betrayal could not break us, and the future was ours to shape, filled with love, laughter, and the enduring power of family. The final months of Matilda's treatment had been grueling, but each day brought a small victory. The sunlight filtering through the hospital windows no longer felt harsh, but hopeful. Machines beeped steadily, nurses moved with practiced care, and I sat by her side, observing the resilience of a woman who had endured betrayal, illness, and the uncertainty of the future and had emerged stronger. It was during one quiet evening, as the sky turned a soft lavender, that Matilda reached for my hand. Her fingers were warm, steady, and full of trust. "Dad," she whispered, "thank you for never giving up on me, on us." I squeezed her hand gently. "I will always fight for you, sweetheart. Always. No one will ever hurt you or the children the way he did." She smiled faintly, a glimmer of the confidence that had returned over the past year. "I know, and I don't have to fight alone anymore. We're together." The betrayal we had faced from Gary had been cruel, calculated, and relentless. Yet that cruelty had only strengthened our resolve. Every yacht party he funded with my money, every moment he spent abandoning his wife, had fueled a fire inside me. A fire that demanded justice, protection, and the reclaiming of what was rightfully ours. As I watched Matilda, I remembered the long nights poring over banking statements, the cold calculations and strategic steps I had taken to sever his access to our finances. Every action had been deliberate, each move aimed at protecting my daughter from further harm. And when the final phone call came, when Gary realized that his privileges and access were gone, the world finally began to make sense again. But Section 8 wasn't about revenge, it was about life beyond it. Gary's absence had left a void, yes, but it also created space for healing, for rebuilding, and for celebrating victories that had been delayed for far too long. Matilda could focus on herself, on her children, on creating a home where love was abundant and fear had no place. By the time she was discharged, the weight of uncertainty had lifted. Her hair had grown back, her laughter returned, and the small, everyday joys of life were no longer overshadowed by betrayal or illness. The drive home from Los Angeles to our new home in Texas felt symbolic, a journey from chaos and pain to security and hope. Our Texas home, once just an idea, now stood as a sanctuary. Sunlight poured through windows, illuminating the hardwood floors where Emma and Jack's toys were scattered in organized chaos. Laughter echoed through the hallways, bouncing off walls painted with the colors of hope and renewal. It was ordinary, yet extraordinary in its significance. Evenings became a cherished ritual. Matilda would cook, the children would play, and I would tend to the garden or woodworking projects I had started for Emma and Jack. Simple moments, making cornbread, watching the stars, telling stories of the past, were now filled with gratitude rather than sorrow. One night, as darkness fell and stars sparkled above, Emma and Jack snuggled against Matilda and me on the porch swing. Jack, full of energy and curiosity, asked about the stars, the moon, and everything beyond. Emma, ever thoughtful, wanted to hear stories of resilience, courage, and the victories we had fought for. I told them the truth, in words they could understand, that life was full of challenges, that some people would let you down, and that betrayal was real, but family, love, and integrity were stronger than any obstacle. And in that moment, I saw understanding bloom in their young eyes. Matilda squeezed my hand, our silent gestures speaking volumes. It was a bond forged through hardship, strengthened by survival, and made unbreakable by love. Together, we had transformed a story of betrayal into a story of triumph. The past year had taught us lessons no school or experience could provide. Gary's choices had revealed a stark contrast between selfishness and selflessness, abandonment and protection. And while he would fade from our lives, the consequences of his actions, legally, socially, and personally, served as a warning that actions have repercussions, often precise and unavoidable. Looking forward, the future was a canvas waiting for us to paint freely. Matilda's career, the children's growth, our family traditions, they were all ours to define. Every meal, every laugh, every bedtime story, and every ordinary Tuesday became a reminder of the extraordinary strength it took to reclaim our lives. The following weeks were marked by quiet victories. Matilda's health continued to improve, her energy and confidence returning fully. Emma and Jack thrived in their new school, making friends and excelling academically. And I, as both father and protector, took solace in the simple joy of witnessing a family reclaiming its rightful peace. Occasionally, Gary would attempt to re-enter our lives, Mills calls, or even indirect threats, but each time, we were prepared. Legal measures were in place, financial safeguards secured, and our unity remained unshakable. The past had given us tools and wisdom, and we used them to ensure that no one could disrupt our newfound harmony. By the time the sun set on another warm Texas evening, the house was alive with laughter, light, and a sense of safety that had once seemed impossible. Matilda, Emma, Jack, and I sat together on the porch swing, reflecting on how far we had come. The storms were harsh, I said, gazing at the horizon, but we made it through, and now nothing can shake the strength of this family. Matilda smiled, resting her head on my shoulder. No storms can ever take this away. We're stronger than ever. And in that moment, under the vast Texas sky, I knew it was true. The past could not define us, betrayal could not break us, and the future was ours to shape, filled with love, laughter, and the enduring power of family. The final months of Matilda's treatment had been grueling, but each day brought a small victory. The sunlight filtering through the hospital windows no longer felt harsh, but hopeful. Machines beeped steadily, nurses moved with practiced care, and I sat by her side, observing the resilience of a woman who had endured betrayal, illness, and the uncertainty of the future and had emerged stronger. It was during one quiet evening, as the sky turned a soft lavender, that Matilda reached for my hand. Her fingers were warm, steady, and full of trust. "Dad," she whispered, "thank you for never giving up on me, on us." I squeezed her hand gently. "I will always fight for you, sweetheart. Always. No one will ever hurt you or the children the way he did." She smiled faintly, a glimmer of the confidence that had returned over the past year. "I know, and I don't have to fight alone anymore. We're together." The betrayal we had faced from Gary had been cruel, calculated, and relentless. Yet that cruelty had only strengthened our resolve. Every yacht party he funded with my money, every moment he spent abandoning his wife, had fueled a fire inside me. A fire that demanded justice, protection, and the reclaiming of what was rightfully ours. As I watched Matilda, I remembered the long nights poring over banking statements, the cold calculations and strategic steps I had taken to sever his access to our finances. Every action had been deliberate, each move aimed at protecting my daughter from further harm. And when the final phone call came, when Gary realized that his privileges and access were gone, the world finally began to make sense again. But Section 8 wasn't about revenge, it was about life beyond it. Gary's absence had left a void, yes, but it also created space for healing, for rebuilding, and for celebrating victories that had been delayed for far too long. Matilda could focus on herself, on her children, on creating a home where love was abundant and fear had no place. By the time she was discharged, the weight of uncertainty had lifted. Her hair had grown back, her laughter returned, and the small, everyday joys of life were no longer overshadowed by betrayal or illness. The drive home from Los Angeles to our new home in Texas felt symbolic, a journey from chaos and pain to security and hope. Our Texas home, once just an idea, now stood as a sanctuary. Sunlight poured through windows, illuminating the hardwood floors where Emma and Jack's toys were scattered in organized chaos. Laughter echoed through the hallways, bouncing off walls painted with the colors of hope and renewal. It was ordinary, yet extraordinary in its significance. Evenings became a cherished ritual. Matilda would cook, the children would play, and I would tend to the garden or woodworking projects I had started for Emma and Jack. Simple moments, making cornbread, watching the stars, telling stories of the past, were now filled with gratitude rather than sorrow. One night, as darkness fell and stars sparkled above, Emma and Jack snuggled against Matilda and me on the porch swing. Jack, full of energy and curiosity, asked about the stars, the moon, and everything beyond. Emma, ever thoughtful, wanted to hear stories of resilience, courage, and the victories we had fought for. I told them the truth, in words they could understand, that life was full of challenges, that some people would let you down, and that betrayal was real, but family, love, and integrity were stronger than any obstacle. And in that moment, I saw understanding bloom in their young eyes. Matilda squeezed my hand, our silent gestures speaking volumes. It was a bond forged through hardship, strengthened by survival, and made unbreakable by love. Together, we had transformed a story of betrayal into a story of triumph. The past year had taught us lessons no school or experience could provide. Gary's choices had revealed a stark contrast between selfishness and selflessness, abandonment and protection. And while he would fade from our lives, the consequences of his actions, legally, socially, and personally, served as a warning that actions have repercussions, often precise and unavoidable. Looking forward, the future was a canvas waiting for us to paint freely. Matilda's career, the children's growth, our family traditions, they were all ours to define. Every meal, every laugh, every bedtime story, and every ordinary Tuesday became a reminder of the extraordinary strength it took to reclaim our lives. In those quiet moments on the porch, under the vast Texas sky, I realized something profound. Victory wasn't in punishment or revenge, was in freedom, in health, in the ability to live without fear. It was in watching my daughter thrive, seeing my grandchildren smile, and knowing that we were no longer at the mercy of a man who had betrayed us. As night deepened, the stars shone brightly, reflecting the peace and stability that had finally settled over our family. Matilda leaned against me, Emma rested her head on her mother's lap, and Jack's small hands clutched his mother's arm as he drifted to sleep. For the first time in years, our home was quiet, not from fear or illness, but from contentment. And in that quiet, I felt the full weight of what we had accomplished. We had survived storms, betrayal, and fear, but we had emerged stronger, united, and truly free. Our story, once one of despair, had transformed into a story of empowerment. Every choice we had made, every protective measure, and every step toward justice had led us here. To peace, to security, and to a life where love and family came first. And as the stars twinkled above, I whispered a promise to myself and to my family, that we would never let anyone harm us like that again, that the lessons we had learned would guide us, protect us, and remind us always of the strength we held within. This was not the end of the story, it was the beginning of a new chapter, one defined by laughter, love, and the unwavering bond of family. And as I watched Matilda, Emma, and Jack sleep peacefully, I knew that we had truly won. Before you go, hit like if this story shocked you, and make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. You, Dan T, want to miss the next jaw-dropping real-life story we re-sharing? Comment below. What would you do if someone betrayed your family like this? I read every single response, and some will be featured in upcoming videos. And don't forget to share this story, because everyone deserves to see what true courage and justice look like. Stick around. The next story is even more shocking, and you'll want to watch every second.